Women have been conditioned by society to be, act, and think a certain way. Here at Girls IRL, we encourage women to challenge societal norms and embrace their femininity. With that being said, let's get into this week's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Girls in Real Life podcast. I am your host, Mariah Clayton, and today I have a treat for y'all because instead of listening to me ramble on and on for an hour, I have a guest with me to talk for an hour as well. Her name is Leslie, and I'm super excited to have you on the show.
Hello, how is everybody doing? I know you guys aren't going to be able to, speak directly
I
back to
know.
me, but I'm excited to be here and speak to you guys today. We do have an exciting episode, something that I'm sure everyone can relate to. So
Absolutely.
we're excited to share that with you guys today.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about boundaries, different types of boundaries, setting boundaries, respecting people's boundaries. And this is a topic that Leslie actually brought to me. So I feel like a lot of you guys wonder, like, how do I become a guest on the show? Like, how do I get involved? And literally, like, just message me. Like, I would love to talk to you guys. I feel like I've had so many, like, in the past, I've had so many of just like my followers or people who bring something to the table and like want to talk about something. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Like, this is not just here for me, it's here for you guys as well. So y'all can send me a message. We also have a website that you can submit something to as well. So if any of you guys are ever interested in being a guest on the show, don't be shy, because I promise I want to talk to you. I want to talk your head off, and I want to dive in deep on certain things.
Yeah, it was not like a whole bunch of hoops and everything, y'all, to get to this. Like, I literally was just like, it was something that was on my heart, and I've seen the podcast, so I know the things that she speaks about, and I'm just like, this is something that would be a good topic. And I literally just messaged her, and she's just like, oh, I like this. We talked about it, and here we are. So that's it. It's not hard, I promise.
So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about boundaries and just like understanding boundaries and what they are. So, I don't know about you, Leslie, but for me, I like to start with definitions. Even though I kind of know that like everybody knows what a boundary
Yes.
is, I just kind of like to make it as
But to
simple
set
as
the
possible. Yeah,
tone.
set the tone for the rest of
Yeah.
the episode. So, I was doing some Googling last night and I found a few things. And it basically just says that boundaries help you define what you are comfortable with and how you would like to be treated by others. So I feel like a lot of times when we think about boundaries, we think it has to be like this. I don't know. I think we make it seem like more
Massive
bigger than what it
thing.
is. Yeah, but it's actually really just something
Hmm.
super simple. And it's like what you allow people to do to you and what you allow you yourself to do to other people. Like that's literally all a boundary is. Do you hear the
Exactly. I
echo or is it
definitely
just me?
agree. I so listen, I think we're trading off. I heard it when you started talking about the definition of boundaries a second ago, and I was gonna say something, but then it went away, and now you're saying you hear it. So,
I don't know. I hope
and
y'all
I
can't
just
hear
heard it.
it.
I just heard it. I I hear it now.
I hope that's not going to actually be in the recording.
I know, I'm thinking the same thing. Should we leave and come back?
I don't
Like,
know. Like this has never
has
happened
it's never
before.
done this before.
Let me
Yeah.
see. Let
Oh
me see.
wow.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep going. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this thing today. Because, listen, I've been having some technical difficulties since I stepped foot into this office. But getting back to what we were talking about, yeah, boundaries are what you are comfortable with and how you would like to be treated by others. So I know when we first had our conversation, Leslie, we really wanted to emphasize that like boundaries are not just for romantic relationships. Boundaries can be centered around
They
your
are
work
not.
relationships, your friendships, your sister,
Your
brother, like
family
sibling relationships. Like,
relationships.
it doesn't just have to
Yep.
be boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. Like, whatever your relationship is, it doesn't just have to be like boundaries in that sense. It can be boundaries literally for every single relationship that you have in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot, that's exactly, a lot of people think that, the boundaries come into play whenever you start to get romantic with someone, which is ironic to another point that we're going to bring up, how people start to slack on your boundaries as they get closer to you. But yeah, it is. It's anybody who you are wanting to be in your life and anybody whose life you're wanting to be a part of. That any relationship that you have, whether it's platonic or romantic, there's boundaries that are in in play. And sometimes people just don't acknowledge that or don't feel like, they have to adhere to those rules because they hold a certain position in your life. And that's just not true. That's not true. Anytime I want to be a part of anybody's life, I have to respect what it is that they're asking of me or what it is that they're telling me that they're comfortable with, or whatever rules it is that they set up for themselves. And anytime I don't do that, I'm risking my relationship with that person, whether you realize it or not. It may seem small to me, but it's not to them. Like, and that's just what boundaries is. It doesn't have to be important to you. It's what matters to the other person, and vice versa, depending on the situation. So,
I think you brought up a good point about time, because I feel like when you do get into a relationship, I feel like, okay, I have two different things to say. So the first thing I'm going to say is when you first get into a relationship and you have boundaries that are set, I feel like a lot of people think like, well, if I didn't bring this up at the beginning of the relationship, then I can't bring it up in the middle, or
yes.
after 5 7 years together. But the thing is, your
And it's
boundaries
not
can
true.
change and develop over time, and you can realize like, hey, this wasn't a boundary for me before, but now I'm bringing it up to you, and I want you to start respecting me in this way. So I think that, a lot of times, especially as girls, when we get into a relationship with a man, I'm going to talk about heterosexual relationships just because that's what I'm used to. When we get into a relationship with a man, if we don't set a boundary at the beginning, then it's kind of like further down the line, if we try and set these physical boundaries or these sexual boundaries, it's like, well, you didn't have a problem with this before. Like, why is that a problem now? It's a
Where
problem
did
now
this
because I
come
said it's a
from?
problem now. Like, I feel like you don't really have to have a reasoning or a response as to why you're bringing it up now, because it's important to you now, and that's all that matters. And then the second thing that I was going to say is that even if you are with someone for multiple years or know someone for multiple years, the closer that people get to you, the less that they feel like they have to respect your boundaries. And that is still not true. Like even though you might
Yes.
be super close with
No.
someone to the point where like maybe your boundary is, I don't want to hold hands. Like I don't like to hold hands, and then maybe y'all are 5 years into the relationship and he wants to hold your hand. And you're like, no, like this is still my boundary. Just because we've been in a relationship for 5 years doesn't mean that you can just now all of a sudden hold my hand. So I know I said a lot. I said two different things, but I
Exactly.
just needed to get that out before I forgot.
No. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like the fact that you touched on like explaining the boundaries because I feel like at some points in relationships, there's not really an explanation needed. I can recall plenty of times when you're like in that beginning stage, whether it's of a friendship or, a romantic relationship, and you are automatically respecting their boundaries just because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. Like, you're very conscious of what you're doing. And then it's just like we just said, the closer you get to them or, the further along the line you go, now all of a sudden it's just like you don't you're not as conscious of it. And I've been guilty of it myself. Like, just because I, am very passionate about this doesn't mean that I get it right every single time. I have had times when I've had to be checked and I've had to check myself. But everyone is worthy of having like their boundaries respected, no matter how big or small they are. And I don't feel like you should have to explain, like you can communicate your boundaries and everything, and maybe there's certain things that you don't want to explain behind it, but you're just like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, like, that's it. Like, like I said, at one point some people won't question. I was like, oh, okay, she says she's not comfortable, like whatever. But then for some reason, the closer you get to me, it's like, oh, I don't care that you're not comfortable, or I don't care what you said. Like, it's just like those lines just start to get crossed, and it's a thing, man. It's a thing.
Now I kind of want to talk about the different types of boundaries. I wrote out four, and if you have any more, you can add on. But the four that I have are physical boundaries, which I think are the ones that like most people are aware of, like don't touch me, don't. And then you have emotional boundaries, you have time boundaries, and then you have sexual boundaries. And those are the four that I kind of wrote down, and we can go in and talk about each one. But did you have any other ones that you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, no, I feel like space and physical boundaries kind of like went into the same thing, and I have like, mixed mixed things about those, especially like after, and I'm sorry if y'all see me keep hitting my camera. Embarrassing, but yeah, like especially like in wake of like COVID and things like that, I was a person, COVID didn't have to happen for me to want my space in the store. Like I didn't come in here with you. I don't know you. Like, you shouldn't be able to like lean over me and see what I'm doing on my phone or anything else. Like, I just like personal space, and I feel like I have that right. It doesn't make me rude to say to you just because I don't know you, like, hey, can you back up a little, or can I get some person, especially if I keep moving myself and then you keep,
Right.
there's only so much I can do.
Exactly.
So I
No,
have to communicate, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible about it. Like,
yeah, I think physical boundaries are a big thing for me because especially when I was like in college and I would go out and guys would come up to me, it's like I had this boundary where like you don't have to touch me to talk to me. And so many guys when I would be out would want to like lean in close or like grab my arm or try and hug me while they're having a conversation with me. I'm like, I literally don't know you at all. So why do you feel this comfortable to come into my personal bubble and like touch me and try and touch my face and my hands and like all of this stuff, try and kiss me? Oh my God. You don't even know how many guys have
oh
like
goodness,
literally,
they're so bold.
oh my God. I'm like, where do you get the audacity from? Literally, where is it coming
The
from?
nerve. And then just when you think it can't get any worse, it's they get offended that you are like, hey, no.
Yeah. And that's the
So,
thing that's been
mm-mm.
happening with a lot of women lately. Like, they're scared to set those boundaries because you see so many girls like getting beat up or literally getting killed because they rejected a man's advances. And it's like, at what point do I have to, you know, what is the word I'm looking for? Pregnancy brain does not go away after you're pregnant. At what point do I have to like be comfortable with you doing whatever you want to me and like I don't have any room or space to say that like you can't do this. I can't not think of the word I'm trying to
Exactly.
say.
But no, I get what you're saying though, and it's such a debilitating feeling because it's just like you know that you have these boundaries and you know that you have the right to express them, but just to feel like you're not going to be respected, like there's harm that's going to come to you, or even like it doesn't have to be physical harm, it could be emotional retaliation, like how someone treats you after you express how you feel about something or how something made you feel or what this boundary is. So it like there's so many different things, but yeah, just not feeling like you're able to express that, but knowing that it is actually how you feel. It's a horrible thing to say yes when you know that it's a no to yourself
Yeah.
and you just like don't feel safe to express that,
Yes. At
whatever
my
it is,
expense is what the word I was trying to say. My
at your
expense.
expense.
I literally could not think of this
I'm
word.
so
I'm
mad that
like,
neither of us said that word.
I was trying to find it and then it finally came to me. But yes, physical boundaries and what I wrote for this encompasses touch, your personal space, and your physical needs. For example, you can create limits about how or when you are touched, as well as who you are comfortable touching you. And then you're also able to determine who is allowed into your personal space or like your home or any place that's like has meaning to you. So personal space just pretty much has to do with like you and your own personal bubble. Like who are you allowing in that space? What are you allowing them to do when they come into your personal space? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I like that you touch on like who you're allowing because I think that sometimes when people see that like you're comfortable with one person doing something, they automatically think that they're able to do it. And then when you communicate like, "No, I'm not comfortable with that." It's like, "Oh, well, why not? So and so it's not about that. Like,
Right.
that's my relationship with them.
Exactly.
That this is my relationship with you, and these are our boundaries. Those are our boundaries.
Right.
So, yeah, like who you allow, what you allow.
The next one is emotional boundaries. And this says having to do with being clear on what is and isn't yours to feel or fix. Your emotions and emotional well being are within your control, regardless of what is happening for the other person. These boundaries help us show empathy without absorbing the other person's feelings, which I think is super important because I know for me, I feel like I'm somewhat of an empath. Like when somebody comes to me with a problem or is like upset about something, I immediately just like kind of take on all of their feelings and try and feel what they're feeling and put myself in their shoes. And then when that happens, like their problems become your problems. And sometimes that's like not a healthy thing to happen.
And it's a roller coaster of emotions as well, then like when you finally come to, you're like, this doesn't even have anything to do with me. Like this isn't even, I am a supporting piece of this, but like the I should not have absorbed like all of this the way that I did. So, yeah, definitely for sure. And then I also feel like, as far as emotional boundaries, I feel like one of the things that's overlooked sometimes, and I know sometimes I'm guilty of this because I'm a very opinionated person. So I find that I have to be very conscious of like when my friends come to me and they like are talking to me about something, I'm one listening and not interrupting them to like, say like, oh, well, what about this? Or why don't you, like da da da. But also that I'm asking them like, do you want me to listen to you or do you want my advice? Like everybody doesn't want your advice.
Right.
I'm very opinionated and I know everybody does not want my advice. So like I'm very conscious of like when someone's speaking to me, like do you, especially if I know I feel like I have to say something, I take the second to pause and I'm like, "Wait." And even if I start saying something, I'll stop mid-sentence and I'm like, "Wait. Do you want my opinion or do you just want me to listen?" And I've had friends that are just like, "I just want you to listen." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Done." Done. And so, like, everybody does not want your advice. Everybody does not want your opinion. Some people just want to talk.
That's
So,
true.
and then also, like, emotion, as far as emotional boundaries, venting. I feel like sometimes, we take for granted the fact that other people have like their own emotional things going on. And so I feel like, even though we have like friends, family, and safe spaces, it's worth it to be like, hey, can I vent to you or can I unload on you instead of just like, like
Going
if you
straight
can help it.
into
I know
it.
sometimes you can't. Yeah. But like, just like don't always, because I know sometimes people get in a habit of like always, going to someone and it's just always like a venting, venting, venting. And it's never a conversation, never a how was your day or checking
Yeah,
in, and you could have so much of your own stuff going on and you don't
exactly.
even get to breathe because like they're just going and going and going. So like, asking, hey, like, because even when I'm upset, I'm like, hey, like, are you free? Like, do you have like the emotional space right now for
Right.
me? Or like, can you do this? Can you do this right now? And I've had like friends like, and when I people set boundaries and when I say these things, like I try to honor them. Like I'm not gonna tell you you can do this, and then when you do it, punish you. And if you do feel like I'm, acting a certain way or feeling a certain way after you express this to me, call me on it. Like let's talk about it because that's in no way ever like what I'm trying to be. But yeah, like I definitely feel like you have to ask, like you have to take in account that they have their own life and they have things going on too. And if things are hard for you, who knows what other people have going on? Jesus, who
Exactly.
knows?
I
Like
know. That is
who
true.
knows?
That is
So,
true.
yeah.
The next boundary that I have is time. It says respecting each other's time. They can also include setting limits on how often you and your partner or whatever, whoever, see each other and how you like to spend your time together. Protecting your time can include not feeling obligated to spend every waking moment with your partner. And I feel like this is what a lot of girlies get caught up on because they're like, ooh, I have a new relationship. Like now we have to spend all of our time together, and I need to be over at his house every single day, and we need to spend all day together, and like we need to talk on the phone all day, and
Yes.
we need to fall asleep on the phone, and we need to call each other as soon as we wake up. And it's just like, girl,
Yes.
take a breath. Like
When do you breathe?
you have not only do you have to respect their time, but like you have to respect your time and not put your entire self into this person because I feel
Because
like
what are
when
you
you
getting
spend
done? What
so
are you
much
doing?
time, I'm talking relationship right now, but like when you spend so much time like trying to put yourself into other people's lives, you are now taking time away from yourself, your personal development, your growth, the things that you like to do, the hobbies that you have. It's like now you're implementing yourself into this entirely new lifestyle for this other person and now you're completely neglecting yourself and that's not fair to you.
And it definitely comes down to you respecting, your time as well. So, setting that boundary and being firm on it and then you standing by it because it's a whirlwind to get caught up in, and it happens so fast. But it just has to be a balance of things. Like you have to, like you said, respect your time and their time. You guys can spend time together. You can spend a lot of time together. But once you start feeling like they can't be apart from you, it's time to reevaluate. Like
Yeah,
what is going on here?
absolutely.
Because you were doing stuff without them before this. So what has changed? And you liked them before it got this deep. So what's going going on here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
But
time to
even
reevaluate.
outside of, no, you're good. Even outside of like a romantic relationship, even maybe in the workplace, like people need to respect your time in the workplace. Let's say we have a meeting set for 10 o'clock for 15 minutes and I gotta, cause
Manager's
I have
not
another
showing up
call
for
at
10:30 till
10:30
10:30.
and you don't show up until 10:10. Now we got to move the whole meeting because
Mm-hmm.
you disrespected my time because I actually have other things that I need to do.
Or they get upset when you leave early and it's just like, I showed up on time, you did not, and I gave you the time that you asked for, so I have other commitments, and other like people have lives outside of like what their commitment is to you. That's a
Exactly.
hard pill to swallow, but it
It
is the
is.
truth.
Like the world does not revolve
So
around you and
yeah,
what you got going on.
it
Like
just
every single
doesn't.
person around you has their own things going on and like you need to respect their time.
I'm like the friend that's always late to everything, that's like always holding everything up. I let my friends know. I'm like, you can just leave me. Like, I want to go so bad, but I'm like,
I'll
you
catch
can
up
just
with y'all
leave. They're like,
later.
no, we're gonna wait on you. Like, if they really want to go, like, they'll go. They know it's no hard feelings, like, at all. Cause I know, like, who knows when we're gonna be ready? It might be 30 minutes, it might be 2 hours. Like, who knows? But I'm very transparent about this.
As long as you know
That is
yourself,
who I am.
that's all that matters.
Yes, so I'm just like, hey, I know, like, exactly. I know myself and I know the people I'm around. I'm like, look, if this is important to you and you have to be on time, go. I'm sorry. Like, or lie to me, like, tell me a different time, like, help me help you. So,
That's funny. Okay, and then the last boundary
yes.
that I have is sexual boundaries, and it's basically how far we're willing to take what we do sexually or physically with another person. And again, this is more so like obviously relational. Like, I mean, well, you might be having one night stands. I don't know. Do you, girl? But as far as like setting those boundaries, like I feel like these are things that you need to set like early on, like I don't like to be touched here. I don't like to do this type of thing, this is not my vibe, and just make it be
And get
known.
comfortable.
Yeah, like get comfortable with this
Mm-hmm.
person because if you're going to be laying down in the bed with them and, doing all of these things, like first of all, you need to trust them and trust that they're going to respect your boundaries, but you also need to know that they have respect for you and that they're going to respect your boundaries because they actually care about you and your well-being and don't want to make this an uncomfortable situation for you.
Absolutely. And it's just like you said, like sometimes things change over time, like your boundaries may change. Like you also want to know that when you communicate something, this person is going to listen to you and it's not going to be this whole thing. Because what if you have other boundaries that come up later down the line? Now you're stuck in the cycle of not being able to express like how you feel and what it is that you want. And that's just not a good place to be. I use the word debilitating again because that's exactly what it is. Like once you finally are able to speak up for yourself, it's not, it doesn't come without consequence. It's just like I said, like you might have people that react bad or do whatever, but it's, you don't feel shy, especially with sexual boundaries. Like do not feel shy about that. It's just like you said, like express them in the beginning. And I'm never shy. Like I don't care, we could have been sleeping together for 10 years, if now I don't like, and I'm not cold, like, I'm going
Yeah,
to do my best to communicate like where it's coming from and things like that. But like it should never become like an argument or like, a blaming thing, or now I'm this and I'm that because I decided to express that, I have a new boundary, or like this is, there's now different, like I'm at different limits right now. Because, like things change, people change,
exactly. And
tolerance
I mean,
changes.
y'all could be kissing, making out, one thing leads to another, and then you realize, like,
Yeah,
oh, wait, I don't actually want to do this. Okay, stop. Like, you
exactly.
have that right to be able to say whatever whenever you want.
Exactly.
Like as soon as you start feeling uncomfortable, you need to open your mouth and say something, because if you continue to let it go on, then now you're going to look back at that moment with so much regret. You're going to blame yourself. You're going to be like, why didn't I do this? And when it's just so much better to just speak out in the moment and not be afraid. Like I would much rather you be afraid of what happens after the fact, like coming from the person, more so than like what's happening in the moment.
And I feel like that's when you kind of have to lean into your support group, because I'm not even gonna lie and be like it's gonna be easy, because especially if this is someone that you thought you're gonna trust, it's gonna feel like an extreme breach of trust once you express a boundary to them and they are now cold or hurtful towards you, because this is just how you feel. Like this is you honoring yourself and respecting yourself, and somehow it's use to villainize you, you know? So it's just like that's when you kind of lean into your support system because it's just something that comes with it, you know? It's the collateral of it, but it doesn't mean that you should stop advocating for yourself and expressing yourself. And it's you know, it's going to get easier to do it, not always easier to take the fallout cuz everything's different, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's just something, it's good practice, like it's good spiritual hygiene, guys. Like you guys need to be telling people, you know, especially like it's if you're gonna lay with them anyway, like think of how many things come with having sex with someone. You could have a baby with them, a
I
whole
know
baby
from
with them. Like you should be
experience.
able to see, like you want to be able to trust this person. Like you guys have the potential to create a whole new life. Like are you crazy? Like let's respect ourselves. Like let's make sure that we're firm on this. Like if you know what you want, like if you know that you're not comfortable with something, just go ahead and say that. And it's just like you said, there's no such thing as something that I didn't say it at first, so I the minute you think it, you can say it. As soon as you're comfortable with saying it, you can say it. It's never too late. You go ahead and you say what you need to say and then you lean into your support system.
Absolutely.
If they are going to react negatively, nothing good was going to come of it anyway. It just lets you know, you know.
That part.
So,
I feel like we've kind of talked about a little bit, so I think we can just go into this naturally, but about like what happens when you enforce those boundaries, like the things that could come from you actually, standing firm in your decision and enforcing your boundaries. You could have a falling out with people. You could have somebody look at you a little bit differently. It could be now we're not friends anymore. Like obviously there are a lot of negative things that can come from setting boundaries, but I think there's so much more positive things that come from you setting boundaries because you're able to advocate for yourself and you're able to make yourself a circle of people that are going to respect you and your wishes in all aspects of your life and not just sometimes. So I think it's a lot better in the long run for sure.
yeah, it definitely lifts you up. It's the very much the beginning of a great like foundation of an amazing support system because it weeds out those people that are just not good for you. Anybody that benefits from you not having boundaries. I know y'all have seen this quote before. Like it's something to live by. Anybody that benefits from you not having boundaries is not someone who you should want for yourself. Like that's just not something that you should want. They shouldn't be benefiting over your lack of respect for yourself, your lack of ability to assert yourself, or express your feelings, the fact that you don't feel safe to do something like that, that should not be a benefit to them. So, yeah, definitely. And it may seem hard at first, but listen, get through the storm, get to the rainbow. So, once you get through that, and you just have to remind yourself because once those traits start to reveal themselves, you kind of have like a little bit of a map to kind of go back and be like, okay, what other things may I have like let slide, or what other boundaries that were crossed, and like this is just when I decided to speak up and this is what happened. And if you can clearly kind of like think of those things, just get through the storm, get to the rainbow, because it really will weed those people out for you.
And for my girlies who don't like conflict and are afraid of conflict, practice makes perfect, okay? Just start with one
Even in
little
the
tiny
mirror.
baby step. Yes, like just start with one little tiny baby step and just work your way up because I promise like it's going to make you feel so much more empowered in the long run. Like don't not say something because you're scared of conflict.
And don't think that it has to be like explosive either. Like if you don't like conflict, you don't have to get mean. Like, mean is usually like my third offense, like I just clear cut communicate, I repeat, and I each time I'm firm and stern, but if I feel like I have to, bulk up to get like, and I'll do that, and then I'll leave the situation. I don't have to explain anything to anybody. This is the boundary that I've set. You don't have to stand there and fight. You've already communicated. You've already stood firm on it. You've already let it know that be known that you're not backing down. Leave the situation. It's not for you. Whatever it is, it's not for you. You just continue to advocate for yourself. It's just like you mentioned the work meeting. Like I've literally had that before where I've had to, because I do production, I do modeling and things like that. So I work and I do my shoots and things like that, you know? So it's just like I like to keep time, like, you know, so when they're calling me in for a meeting, especially on my day off, and they're like, it's mandatory. I'm staying for the time that you guys set. And I left a meeting before and was they chastised me and they even tried to write me up for it. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like
No.
I'm not signing this write up. And we did take it to HR and it was dropped, but it's like I'm not signing this write up. I know plenty of people that would have because they were trying to intimidate me, but I'm like, absolutely not. I have stuff to do. And even when they were telling me that I was going to get written up if I left, okay, write me up. You told me that this meeting, and they did start late, and I was on time. I was early, in fact, because I didn't, and I told you I'm a late girl. So I made sure I was here early because I had a really busy day. And so I'm just like, you threatening to write me up is not going to change the fact that I have other things to do. So right away, and we'll handle this when I come back to work next week. Like
I love
you've
that.
taken up enough of my time. Yeah, like I'm not about to argue. You don't have to sit there and fight. Like there was nothing else to say. I have something else to do, and your time is up. So.
Are there any other stories that you want to share about like you enforcing your boundaries or people respecting your boundaries?
Yeah, maybe a positive one. So I have had times when, like me enforce my boundaries, like have been scary. And I would say that it is actually in contrast to like one of the stories that you and I spoke about when we first started mentioning this. But yeah, I was not comfortable with the rate that I was going to be getting paid for a job. And I feel like it's something that can be very nerve wracking to talk about, regardless. But negotiation is a skill. You have to really nurture that and nurse it. And it comes with like knowing your worth and practicing and building that confidence. And anybody can learn to negotiate for themselves and advocate for them. It literally starts with advocating for yourselves. That's where negotiation starts. You gotta start enforcing like what it is you want from the get-go at all areas of your life. You're not gonna know how to negotiate otherwise. So,
Exactly.
but I like even then it's still scary. And so I'm like, oh my God, what if I like say this and then they're like, oh, I don't want to work with you anymore because that's too expensive. And it actually was the opposite effect. Like I ended up getting in with this really good production company that uses me regularly now and they adhere to my rates. They actually pay me more than what I asked for when I first started with them. So it's like it's not always a bad thing. Like sometimes when you stand up for yourself and you because I knew I had the experience for the jobs that they were asking for, and I also knew how much time and dedication and travel, like in production, you got to travel a lot, and sometimes everything is so last minute. Like so it's just like it's a lot of like moving. So I know what I bring to the table and I know what it is that I can do for you guys, and I'm just like I'm always willing to work. Like, I'll work with a budget. Like, let me know what it is that you're
Yeah.
willing and able to do. But like for it, when I know that something is gonna take like my sleepless nights and sleepless mornings and like it needs to be worth it to me. Because I there was a time when I would bleed myself dry for the sake of others, and just like not wanting to be that girl, like
Yeah.
that difficult girl. And those days are gone, people. I'm sorry to say.
I think finances, like negotiating finances, and even just like as a content creator, like when brands send me, campaigns and the money is like super low or like there's no money at all. When I first started, I would be like so scared to say like, "Oh, this is a little bit low," or like, "Do you actually have a budget?" Because like right now I'm getting $0. Like I'd be so terrified to say those things because I thought that they would think I'm just all about money or like all I care about is money or they would think that like I'm not grateful. I always thought that like if I ever said something back to them that they would just have this negative view of me. And so I would always just say yes to everything. Like I was just the yes girl. Like, yes, you asked me to do something. Yes. You asked me to do this. Yes. And it got to the point where I was like, I am running myself dry trying to make everybody happy because I'm doing things that are not worth my time, my energy, or my my effort,
And you're
and it
doing
is
them
taking a
well, because
toll
I'm
on me.
sure that you're doing them well.
Yes, like doing it to the best of my ability as if you're paying me top dollar. But
Exactly.
but I just had to get to a point where I was just like, no. And I had to start setting rates for myself. And it's like, if you can't meet me here, then like tell me what your budget is and I might be able to work with you. But other than that, like, I'm gonna have to walk away from this. And like the story that I told you, and I feel like I've told the story on the podcast before, but when I was Miss Louisiana and I had this dress company reach out to me and say, like, hey, we're doing a shoot, like come and model for us. It's gonna be in a different city, like an hour drive away, and it's gonna be from this time to this time. And I already had an appearance later that night at like 6 o'clock. And so I told them, I was like, look, is there a budget for this? You know, like, how much are you going to pay? And they're like, well, we're not going to pay, but you can get all of your pictures. Like, we'll give you all of your pictures. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Thank you for the opportunity, but I cannot drive an hour away, go and do this shoot, be stuck in traffic driving back, trying to make it to what I actually said that I was going to do today. I just can't do it. And of course, this person was so upset, thought all I cared about was money, said that he's going to out me and like show the Louisiana what their queen is all about. And I'm just like, go ahead. Like, I don't care.
How do you feel like, because I'm telling you that I cannot do what you're saying, or that I'm not going to do it, now all of a sudden I am this horrible person?
Right.
You know,
But
it's
you was
just
just
like
asking me to do
you
something for you.
I exactly, and you came to me for a reason. I'm assuming it was including my character. You knew I was Miss Louisiana, you know? So it's just like you wanted me to rep your company, so obviously you think I'm reputable. So let's be honest, you're upset that things are not going your way. You're upset that I have standards for myself and that this is not going to work for me, which means that right now you, sir, cannot afford me, whether it's by time or money or whatever. Like, I it's too expensive for me. And the expenses don't just have to be financial. Like, time, it doesn't rewind. It only goes forward. So it has to work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And you
still just
take
be
great
getting mad about
pictures. You
that
could
to this day.
definitely
Like, I can't believe this
you
man
could
really said that to
definitely do.
me.
Yeah, he really tried to paint it in a bad light. And that's what I mean by like being villainized. It's just like you should never feel like you, if you guys heard that, that was my alarm going
Oh,
off.
that's okay.
But but yeah, like you should never feel like, just because you are not comfortable with doing something, or just because you don't agree with someone, now all of a sudden you're like this horrible person. It's just like, you just thought I was a great person. You thought I was amazing, and now we're not on the we don't agree, like we don't see things the same, and now I'm horrible and I'm a witch and so it's just like, and I'm difficult, I'm controlling. It's just like, it's just not true. It's not fair. Like, you're definitely projecting some kind of image on me that's just not who I am. And you have to, like, it's not going to be easy at first, I feel like, but you got to be able to separate yourself from that too, cuz it's going to happen. Like imagine if you took on everything he was saying about you and like, "Oh my gosh, I am all about money," and then you just went back to doing everything for free. What would
Like,
your life be?
I'll be broke.
What are we doing? Like what are we doing? Like, what? No. So it, like, you do just keep moving forward. Like, I promise you, like you said, only good comes from it. Only good comes from it.
So this whole time we've kind of been talking about us, setting boundaries, having people respect our boundaries, but I kind of want to talk about what happens when we disrespect somebody else's boundaries, and like the guilt that kind of comes with that, how we can come back from it, because like we said at the beginning, nobody is perfect. At some point in our lives, in the past, the present, or the near future, we are going to disrespect somebody's boundaries, whether we mean to or not. And how can we come back from that?
Definitely apologize. Like I said, like something could seem so small to you. Like, you could even know someone's boundaries and then do something as a joke. But if you think about it, if someone has a boundary, like, you shouldn't be joking on it anyway, or like even like playing with them in that in that way. But like, we've all like done it in some scale or another, I feel like. So it's just like, apologize. Like, it's not hard to acknowledge. Like, people always want to argue, like, that's not my intention, or I would never do that on purpose. It's like, when someone expresses their boundaries towards you beforehand, you automatically throw the right to use that excuse of, I wouldn't do that on purpose, out the window. Like, like, you can say it wasn't your intention and everything else, but it's just like, you have to acknowledge that, like, hey, I know this is a boundary for them and I messed up. Like, it's not a, oh, it's because of this and what I really meant was this. Like all of that is fine, but all of that is also aftercare. Before care is like, acknowledging that you crossed the line and that it impacted how someone felt. And also it's a breach of trust, like when someone, especially when someone expresses something to you and then you still cross that
Yeah.
line, and then you, worse, like you have the nerve to try to make them feel bad for feeling offended that you crossed their line when they stand up for themselves. Like, no, absolutely not. You need to apologize. Like, you need to acknowledge that regardless of what you meant to do, like you crossed a boundary, and like let's talk about not doing it again. you know
Yeah, I feel like just because somebody disrespects you or crosses a boundary, or if you do that to someone, it doesn't necessarily, like, obviously people can do whatever they want, but I don't, for me personally, I don't think it necessarily calls for cutting people out of your life or making it this big thing all the time, like depending on what it is. I think a lot of times you can just have a conversation about it and be like, look, this really hurt me, and I would appreciate it if you could acknowledge that it hurt me and respect this boundary for me going forward. And if you can't do that, then obviously, cut ties with that person, but give people a chance. I'm a firm believer in second chances, in redemption. I think people can change. I think people can learn, and that's what you're supposed to do in life. You're supposed to grow and you're supposed to learn from your mistakes. So give
Absolutely.
people the chance to like make it up to you, improve themselves to you again. And I know that that's hard for a lot of people because a lot of us out here have trust issues. Yeah, and it's just like, hurt me one time, shame on me, hurt me two times. I mean, hurt me once, shame on you, hurt me two times, shame on me. But I honestly do think that like you should give people a second chance because everybody deserves grace at some point. You can't just be this judge who bangs the gavel and like that's it.
You're gonna mess up at some point too. You're gonna need grace, you're gonna need forgiveness, like, so I am highly sensitive, and I know that I get on like people's nerves. I know that I sometimes, like, like people, I'm very comfortable like with correction, being called out. I welcome it because I'm going to let you know whether I'm comfortable with how you're treating me and what you're doing or not. And I'm very comfortable and firm in doing so because I just like to have a peaceful life, not just external, internal. I got to live with myself, and that it eats you alive whenever you're like just trying to please everybody else and you're the only one that's unhappy. So, yeah, I oh gosh, I lost my train of thought on where I was going
Oh
with that. Oh,
no.
I hate when that happens. And I don't even have pregnancy brain. I just have
Regular brain.
too much going on brain. Yeah, too much going on brain. Uh,
Maybe it'll come back to
I'm
you.
trying to think. It'll come back. Yeah, it'll come back. Man, that's so
It's
sad. I know
okay.
I
It
was going
happens,
somewhere with
literally
that. I
happens
shouldn't
to
have
me
made the
all the
joke.
time. No, it literally happens to me all the
I
time.
shouldn't have made the joke.
But no, I think that if people were more open to criticism and just like critique in general, then the world would honestly be a better place because everybody feels like their poop don't stink and really it does. And it's like sometimes people need to come and check you.
Yes, and I remember where I was going with it because I was talking about being checked. Yes, you're gonna, like, everybody needs grace at some point. And I just remember like a situation where I was the person, like I said, that violated, like it was only a joke, and just to give context on the situation, a friend of mine, he did not like anybody driving his car or like doing anything with his car. And so I thought it would be funny to see if I could like get his keys out of his room. We were in college. But I thought it'd be funny to see if like we could like get his keys out of his room and like see if we could like get downstairs and like start the car and like act like we were going somewhere like without him noticing. Oh, he was fuming. He was fuming. He was fuming. We got we got downstairs. It was like me and one other friend. Like we got downstairs and we're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe he didn't notice. Like da 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 da. And like we're starting the car and everything. We look up. He's like walking out the gate and he just looks like so angry, and I'm just like, oh God. And it was, I thought, yes, and I thought it was like funny, and he was so mad. And so he walked us to the car, and we were like laughing. We were like, I was like, I'm sorry, but it was now a nervous laugh. It wasn't even a funny laugh anymore because he was like so, he was so upset, and he was like, give me my keys. So I gave him his keys. He like left us in the car with the doors open and everything. He was so upset. Like you just leave someone in your car. He was like, "Give me my keys. Give me the keys." He just walked upstairs. He didn't like tell us to get out of the car, nothing. So we close the door and we go back up there and we're like, "Kenny, like, is everything okay? Like, are you sorry? Like, we were just joking." And he is not talking to us. Like, he is so mad. But we know he doesn't want anybody like touching his car, driving his car. Like, it shouldn't have happened. So even though like I thought it was okay, like I really, it got past like the laughing point. I'm just like, I felt really, really bad because I'm just like, obviously, I never intended to hurt him or like to make him feel any type of way, but like he was mad, and you could tell he was mad. Like he didn't even yell at us, he was so disappointed in us as friends. Like I'm not even kidding. And so, yeah, we finally were able to like. I tried to get him food and everything. Like he didn't want anything from us. He wanted nothing to do with us. And we were finally able to like talk about it, and I apologize. And now like he'll let me whip his car around like all over the place. But it's just like at that point in time, like he had certain boundaries in place, and that goes back to us saying boundaries can change, like that was just what his boundary was at that point in time. So it's just like I'm glad that it wasn't a, because some people can be very, very cold and, like you said, callous, and just be like, you know what, you did this to me, and I'm gonna like, duh. And I'm a very sensitive person, so like sometimes I just gotta take peace to myself and be like, they didn't mean to hurt you, like
Yeah. I think you have to give
you
people
you
the
do
right
stuff on
to,
accident too.
yeah. But I do think you have to
Yeah.
give people the right to be upset and like give them their space to process their feelings. Like, they deserve that because you did do something to them. But, at the end of the day, like I said, I do think that people deserve second chances. And like, if you can prove yourself and build that trust back, then hand clap for you. Good job. You did it. And if not, then it just is what it is.
Yeah, and then just because you forgive them doesn't mean that you want to like fall back into the same like routine. Because at the end of the day, it is like a building the trust back thing. And I feel like sometimes like they'll be like, "Oh, but I already said sorry," and it's just like, yeah, you did, but like baby steps. Like we're working forward, not backward. But at the end of the day, like you still violated. I'm not holding it against you. I'm just you know this is a boundary and there's a guard there, now, like, because you crossed that line before. So prove that you're going to respect it, and then we can move forward from that.
Yeah. So, do you have any tips for people on how to set boundaries? Like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be in each category, but like, what would be some advice that you would give someone to kind of help them set boundaries for people in their life? Maybe they've never had boundaries and now like want to set some, what would be some advice or some tips that you would give them in order to set those boundaries?
And I like that you mentioned age. So I feel like anything that you're comfortable with, the first thing that came to mind whenever you said something about age, I have like a niece and a nephew. They are 3 and 8. So obviously the 3-year-old, like he's like potty trained, like he's in. So we're in the habit of asking like, do you need help to go to the bathroom? Like, do you want me in there with you, or do you want me to stand by the door? And same thing with them. Like I feel like a lot of times people just like do whatever they want, and they feel like kids themselves like don't have to. Because I even remember at a young age things that I know, like I don't have to. You don't have to hug everybody. Like what was that? Like people thinking that you had to hug them just because you were a kid. Like what are you talking about? And then I was the problem child, Mariah. I won't lie to you. Like I was not hugging
Yeah.
everybody. Like I don't want to hug you. Like like I don't hug people that I know all the time when I don't feel like hugging. Like like, and they respect that. So why do I have to feel bad that I don't want to hug you? So it's just like, yeah, I feel like at it can be simple things like are you okay, like asking someone like, hey, are you okay with this, setting. And that's how you, because you don't have to just wait for someone to set a boundary in a relationship. And I feel like that's important because we also touched on the fact that sometimes people are uncomfortable with speaking about things. So I feel like when you open the door to that conversation, like you start to create a safe space, and that's just part of emotional maturity and emotional awareness anyway, creating that safe space in your relationships. So you can ask someone, as a part of starting to set boundaries in your relationships in general, like, hey, are you comfortable with this? Or hey, like, do you like this? Or or hey, how do you feel about this? I feel like that's a great way to start boundaries, not just for yourself, but just for your relationships in general.
I feel like a lot of times boundaries are kind of set naturally. Like I've honestly never been in a situation where like I sit somebody down and be like, these are my boundaries. This. Don't do this. Don't do this. You can do this, but don't do this. I think that over time, as the relationship develops, you kind of see and understand what's important to you, what rubs you the wrong way, what makes you feel uncomfortable. And like you said, once it comes to your mind, you can say something. So I don't think it has to be this big like sit down meeting, like let's talk about boundaries. I think that as it comes up naturally over time, you'll be able to tell what boundaries you need to set and what boundaries you think are like, okay, I'm good with this.
And that even applies to, I like what you said, like as it comes up naturally over time in situations, because that even applies to what I just said. Like we could be in a situation right now, and I could just notice that, I moved too close to you, and you got like a little, and you may not say it, but it's just like, oh,
Take a
hey,
mental
like,
note.
am I too close to you? Like, are you, yeah, being aware of other people is very important because we all want things and have boundaries for ourselves. And I feel like being aware of other people's boundaries and making it like a thing to actually be aware when other people like are giving you cues of their boundaries, nonverbal cues like are a very important part of communication. So pay attention to those. Those are an important thing to pay attention to in boundaries as well. Like, a lot of people will see that you're uncomfortable and still claim that they didn't know, that what they were doing bothered you, when really they were just glad that you weren't saying anything because they're like, well, if she isn't going to say anything, then I'm not going to say anything. So they're like, they know, you know.
Yeah. I think it just comes with time, like I said. And, once you kind of realize what makes you uncomfortable, you just say it and you just let that be that. And from that point on, the boundary is set and it's just a mutual understanding. Like, this is what it is until you tell me something different.
And that's for, again, anybody. It could be a sister, it could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a boss, it could be a boyfriend, it could be a neighbor, it could be a girlfriend. It does not matter. Like, it does not matter. If you have a relationship with this person, platonic, romantic, working, like, if you have a relationship with this person, you can have set standards and boundaries for that relationship. And you have a right, because you're a part of that relationship, you have a right to voice that. And, it's a reasonable expectation because they're going to make you think you're irrational sometimes. So just remember, it's a reasonable expectation to expect that your boundaries are going to be respected and heard with or without explanation.
Absolutely. Well, Leslie,
Yeah.
this was such a good
Yeah.
episode. Thank you so much for taking the
I
time to chat with
loved
me today. I
it.
loved doing this with you. We had so much fun.
Yeah, we did. Thank you for having me. I love this. Girls in Real Life.
Yes.
I literally I love Girls in Real Life. If you guys have not checked out like all the other, I watched your Halloween costume episode and it was super, super
Thank
cute. So
you.
yeah, I'm like trying to put my niece on to you. So yeah, like listen, if y'all haven't checked out the other ones, definitely do. But yeah, I've been on your podcast for a while, and I'm definitely glad that I was able to come here today. Like I said, I felt like this is a relatable topic, and I felt who better to discuss this with, because one thing about Mariah, she's gonna keep it real, and she's gonna like really like dive into it, and like give the girls what they need. So I was like, who better do this with than
Oh,
her? So
thank you
I'm
so
glad
much.
that
That
you
means so
had
much. Oh my
me.
gosh. I literally want to cry, but I'm not because I did
Yeah.
my lashes this morning. So.
I did not.
Oh my goodness. Well, guys, I hope this inspired you to kind of reevaluate some relationships in your life. Maybe think about new boundaries that you want to set or old boundaries that you might want to revisit. Old people who you might have kicked out of your life for something super small. Maybe you want to call them and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry. Like, you just messed with a boundary of mine." But yeah, Leslie, thank you so much for joining me again. I hope that you guys have a great Monday, a great week, and I will talk to y'all in my next episode. Bye.